This podcast may contain subject matter that some listeners may find disturbing or harmful. Audience discretion is advised.
Giving free one-sided therapy to the stars of reality. It's Rachel and Kacie with CBT and the TV. CBT and the TV.
Hello, darlings, dears, and fellow queers, and welcome back to CBT in the TV. As always, I'm Kacie, not Rachel.
And I'm Rachel, not Kacie.
And oh Lord, friends, are we back with a bang? We are here to get back to really the start of all of Rachel's and I's existential crises. Dance Moms! So we're back with season 2 of Dance Moms, and while the title of the episode on Lifetime is Everyone's Replaceable, fuck that shit, we're just gonna say, and we're back. I think that's the mood everyone except for Abby has in this episode. But before we dive too much further into the actual shit show that is this, I swear they had to have had like a time turner, or I don't know how they fit this much into a regularly timed episode. Let's check in with Rachel and Kacie's Jar of Fun. And I'm just going to ask Rachel what you did over our little break.
Kept rehearsing for the musical. I'm working on getting a car and hopefully will tomorrow. So
Fingers crossed. All right, I just kept getting ready for Halloween. I've been getting ready for Halloween since July, and I will keep that up until
next Halloween.
I mean, yeah, honestly, I'm kind of like the mayor of Halloween Town. And then let's check in with our snacks and drinks. Rachel, what you got on tap today?
Well, I actually just finished my mug of Frosted Flakes, and I have Fanta left over from dinner.
Nice. All right, I am having some Little Bites pumpkin muffins, and then my spooky smoothie. It's really just chocolate flavored, but I put it in spooky cup. And
Tis in the season.
Yeah. And then my emotional support water bottle. And with that, I think we're ready to head into the episode. We open with a recap of the last season, and they show us everything from Christy and Melissa's big blowout of a fight in the dressing room to Dawn Check and Reagan being thrown out of the studio, even though I don't know really why we would include that. They aren't really on the show, and I'm sure they didn't want this re-aired since it was a traumatic experience for them. And the girls winning nationals, and they make sure to include some voiceover of Abby telling the girls that next season every girl is going to go home with the crown on her head, and we will see how that holds up. I think we can all make a pretty educated freaking guess. And then the intro plays, and we see that we are back in Pittsburgh. Abby calls everyone in for Pyramid, and right away we notice that we only have 3 moms. Holly is not there. Abby asks Nia where she is, and when Nia replies that she's at work, Abby decides that a really great way to kick off this new dance season is by screaming at Nia for something that's completely out of her control, her mom's absence. She tells Nia that this is unacceptable and that Holly needs to leave work and be there with her. And everyone seems to feel like super awkward, even Melissa. They're all like looking around and looking at the floor and looking at each other, except for Nia, who's just standing there staring at Abby like, what am I supposed to do right now? Like, I mean, we're not even a minute into the episode. Dear God, make this up. Christy and Kelly have pointed out on their podcast that Abby was always telling the other moms to leave her studio and go get a job. But when it came to Holly, she wanted her to quit her job, leave her job, and come to the studio. And as much as I would like to say that this is just Abby's narcissistic tendencies to be contrarian on display, or production asking Abby to do something specific to like start things off on a bad note for the first episode, I can't, because the family that she's targeting is a Black family. We also know that Abby has a tendency to treat her dancers of color very stereotypical in specific ways. And so starting off the very first episode of season 2 this way is just like, well, and we're back. Abby congratulates the girls on their national win, but says that because of this and their being in the music video, everyone now knows who they are and they will be out to get them and just waiting for them to make a mistake. And we have to remember that, much like Fight Club, the first and second rules of the show Dance Moms are we do not talk about the show on the show. So when Abby says that everyone knows who they are because they won nationals and booked a music video, what she really means is everyone knows who they are now because of the show. And while I also fully believe that some of Abby's colleagues may have dreamt of the day where they might bring Abby down a whole peg, because, like, honestly, who wouldn't want to do that? I really don't think that most, if any of them, truly wanted the children to fail in order to see that happen. Abby then tells the girls that they all know why Kathy and Vivi are no longer there, that Kathy wasn't a team player, so she's going to harm Vivi with her choices. And just another reminder that Kathy only signed up to be a part of the show when it was supposed to be a 10-episode docu-series, and the longer it kept getting pushed out while they were traveling on the road, like, nope, we're doing another episode, nope, we're doing another episode. Kathy was like, I can't keep abandoning my own students at my own studio, my own kids. I can't do that. So she left, and the agreement was that she would film at her own studio. Do I think that that has anything to do with how appalling Kathy's behavior is otherwise? Absolutely not. Do I still think it's important for us to be rooted in actual reality and not reality TV reality? Yes, I do. And are we Kathy fans on this podcast? 100% no. Are we Vivi fans on this podcast? No. We are Vivi stans, and don't get it twisted. And I also fucking hate how Abby goes on to talk about Vivi for years, but then wants Vivi to do interviews with her, and yuck. Does it surprise me? No, but still hate it. Abby goes on to tell everyone that they will be holding an open audition for someone else to join the team to replace Vivi, and Kelly tells us in an interview that she's nervous that Abby might try to replace Brooke and Paige as well, because they're always at the bottom of the pyramid. Kelly and Abby are always fighting, and she did mention finding more than one replacement because, you know, everyone's replaceable. And this is the first time we hear Kelly mention that she's worried about Abby contemplating replacing both of her girls, but it certainly will not be the last. And there are a lot of things that pop up in this episode that continue for pretty much the whole series.
This was, I feel like, the first time that you really hear Kelly saying, I want to leave, without like genuinely she wants to leave.
Yes,
like,
you see her in
super
distress
serious.
saying, why am I here? Why am I doing this? It's not like, why do I even put up with this? This is still, like, no, it's, she's in distress. In her own interview, Christy says, everyone's replaceable. Yeah, Abby, we've all heard that, and so are you. And, like, seriously, what would we do without Christy? We need her comedic relief, or we would die.
For real.
Abby begins talking about the pyramid, and Abby reveals that the lowest place on the pyramid has gone to Kenzie. Boo! And she tells Kenzie that she can't be a baby anymore because she's 7 now, and so Abby expects her to be doing what Maddie was doing at 7. And I really wanted to get your perspective, right, on this from a developmental and sibling relational standpoint, because I can't imagine that this is going to be good for the girls' relationship or Kenzie's brain.
She probably would be like, yeah, of course I was the bottom because I'm not the favorite. But even this is what I expect from you because I expected this from your sister. Like, every kid has their own strengths, and we can't expect Mackenzie to have the same strengths as her sister.
And what do we think about pitting the sisters directly against each other?
As somebody who has siblings, several siblings, and we like to be in competition with each other, I think when the child chooses to be in competition, it can push for growth. But when a child is forced into competition with their sibling, it can be like, hey, I didn't agree to that because I didn't think I could beat them, so I didn't want to feel bad for losing. But instead, she's just kind of being put in that position of like, well, you're going to be forced to lose.
From a dance perspective, I thought this was always like super, super weird because Maddie and Mackenzie are such different dancers. So it's weird to me that Abby says, you know, she understands dance so well and she's got all these certifications in dance, but she says these things that I'm like, you don't seem to expect Paige to do exactly what Brooke does, because you seem to understand that contortion's wildly different. Why do you seem to think that Kenzie, who is a tumbler and a little bit of a contortionist herself, should be doing lyrical stuff and tap? This doesn't make sense. These don't go together.
I think it's because Mackenzie looks so much like Maddie. I don't know that Abby can separate the two in her mind.
And maybe because Paige and Brooke don't look as much. Weird. And I hate it, but still, I hadn't thought about that. Interesting. Next on the pyramid, revealed in very quick succession, are Brooke and Paige. And Abby asks Brooke why she's on the bottom of the pyramid after having such a great season. This was, of course, meant as a rhetorical question. She's not going to let Brooke answer. And she says it's because Brooke took a vacation. You can't, win a national title and then go on summer vacation, Brooke. That's ridiculous. But she's like, you can't win a national title and then go on vacation, Brooke. Which I hate when Abby holds the children being taken on vacation against them. This is not the first time. This is not the last time we're going to see this. Because it's not like they're in charge of their own fucking schedules. They're children. Anyway, she tells Paige that she's on the bottom of the pyramid for the same reason as her sister, and that she has a new concept for them. It's called year-round dancing. Abby, they already do that. They were back in time for booty camp, as far as I know, and they went on, maybe a week-long vacation in the summer.
Which, booty camp is a whole problem in and of itself, so sorry, listeners, we're bypassing that this time.
Oh, yeah. There's also not enough talked about in this episode to talk about booty camp. You can get that next year when we cover season 3, because there will be plenty enough to talk about for booty camp then. Next up is Nia, who is so excited to be on the second row, which, of course, Abby can't let her joy last for long. She tells Nia that every time she talks with Holly, all she hears is that Nia wants to win a title. Everything is title, title, title. But she's not here. Holly's not here. So your mommy could care less if you win a title. Now, leaving out the absolute grossness of what Abby just said, I'm going to focus on one thing. Abby loves to be a stickler for grammar and pronunciation. So here's the thing, Abby. The saying is, Holly couldn't care less. But that's not true, and I think you know that. So this was a Freudian slip. You know that Holly could care less, which means she actually cares a great deal.
I love that Nia is so secure in herself that she doesn't let it, as Abby's saying it, you don't see Nia getting upset about it.
Oh no, she doesn't crumple. She just stands there. Nia tells us in an interview that she's the only person who needs to be at the dance studio, not her mom, because her mom needs to be at work. Nia says that she's the dancer, not her mom. And I think the fact that Nia understood this and could articulate it so well at 9 and 10 years old, when Abby probably still can't understand this at 59 years old, is both impressive and sad.
I mean, it goes to show that, her parents have likely had this conversation with her a number of times, and she has the capacity to understand, well, my mom has her job and dance is my job. So, why does... I don't have to go to my mom's work. Why does mom have to come to my work? I mean, it's a great representation of secure attachment, because she knows that, even when her parent isn't present, she doesn't have to worry about it. She knows that her mom has her back, even though mom is not physically there. It just... Because secure attachment is not just about when the parent is there. It's also about when the parent is not there. So it's if you want to see what secure attachment looks like, look at Nia at this age in this episode.
And it just makes me wonder if Abby was actively trying to get in there and work at destroying that, because of the way she goes on to treat Nia for years. Next on the pyramid is Chloe, and Abby talks about how they booked the video and how this is making Chloe a target. And Christy says that Chloe booked the lead in the music video, but she still couldn't make it to the top of the pyramid. And Rachel, I wanted to ask you about Abby using general terms like "we booked the video" to talk about Chloe's accomplishments, because this certainly will not be the only time that Abby does something like this to Chloe, like not using her name. And we know that othering people with words like calling grown men boy, or referring only to someone as she or them instead of right in front of them instead of calling them by their name can be extremely dehumanizing even for adults. So what might this be doing to a child's brain like Chloe's?
I think it diminishes the accomplishment. It diminishes the sense of pride and achievement that a child is really supposed to have with something like that. Like if my older sister was the lead in this music video, I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. I wouldn't be like, oh, look at us. I'd be like, holy cow, you got it. I don't know that Abby is capable of letting Chloe have any success outside of Maddie.
I think you're probably right. Rounding out the pyramid at the top, of course, is Maddie. And Abby also seems to pay very little attention to Maddie even this week. Like, she doesn't seem to give that much attention to Maddie at all, which is odd because Maddie's at the top. She usually loves that. And she just tears the cover off her photo and says, "You're at the top because you won a national title." It's weird. Abby tells everyone that Maddie, Chloe, and Nia will all have solos this week, but she tells Maddie that this will not be an easy win for her because she has moved up to the 9 and over age group and that she'll be on the youngest side of the group all year. And in an interview, Maddie tells us that she's not really worried about moving up anyway, that it doesn't make her nervous because she doesn't care that much about her competition as long as she gets to dance, she's happy. And well, I think that production might have been trying to use this to feed into the Maddie thinks she's better than everyone narrative. All I hear is Maddie saying she doesn't care about the competition aspect of it. All she cares about is getting to dance because dancing is what makes her happy. And I think there's a couple of times in this episode where they try to catch Maddie and Chloe in moments of I'm better than everyone, but all it comes off as is both of them saying that they just love dancing and love their friends. Abby tells us that we are heading to Dance Troops International Competition in Greensboro, North Carolina, and that the number this week is called Sassy Dolls. Abby dismisses the girls, telling them that they only have a week to learn the whole routine from scratch, and she tells us in an interview that she's really proud of the girls for making it to the top at nationals this last year, but that this year she wants them to focus on staying at the top because that's a whole different thing. We head into group rehearsal and we get some shots of the girls working on the routine, and Abby tells us a bit about her inspiration for the number. She says that the girls are supposed to be hot and sassy space cadets, which is weird to me because the title of the song is Sassy Dolls. The girls are supposed to be acting like dolls, and even Kenzie, they even have Kenzie in a doll box. But, like, sure, Abby, they're space cadets. And she says that this is high energy jazz. They are dressed as like futuristic dolls, but it's still weird to me. I don't know. Up in dance jail, Christy and Kelly are talking about how ridiculous Pyramid was, and Christy tells Kelly that she thinks it was crazy that Chloe could land the lead in a music video and still not land at the top of the pyramid. And Kelly reminds her that she isn't the one to complain about this too, because both of her girls landed at the bottom of the pyramid again. Meanwhile, Melissa just sits there, but I do wonder what she was thinking at this moment because while Maddie did beat out Chloe for the very top spot, Kenzie also unfortunately beat out the Highland girls for the lowest spot. So she's literally caught between a rock and a hard place. Back in rehearsal, Abby is yelling at the girls about one part of the dance that they're all doing differently, and she tells them that what really bothers her about this the most is that no one has the common sense to raise their hand and ask. And personally, as a kid who grew up in performance, I hate when teachers say this because it is almost always said by teachers who do not model this or teach this directly to their students. They just expect the kids to have picked this up by osmosis. And that's a behavior that has to be modeled because it's almost also always said by teachers who tend to yell at their kids a lot. No kid is going to feel safe raising their hand and asking you a question, okay? They're going to be in fear that that's going to get them screamed at even more. Abby goes on to scream at the girls more, asking if they want to be dance captains or do they want to be the ones getting cut at the audition, which I also hate because casting directors are never looking for utter perfection at the audition. They are looking for potential, and Abby ought to fucking know that for how many showbiz connections she claims to have. Back in dance jail, the moms start talking about the upcoming open audition, and Christy says that she thinks it's going to be weird to have someone else join the team and that they all need to say a little prayer that the new person doesn't turn out to be like Kathy. It is spooky season, and whether she's like the Wicked Witch or Beetlejuice, we have now said her name too many times, and Kathy is now appearing before us. We head to Candy Apple's Dance Center in Ohio, where Kathy tells us that she and her little apples have been up to all sorts of things, and they're even starting their competition season early this year. But don't get it twisted. They aren't actually going to be competing in this episode, okay? She doesn't say that. I'm letting you know. She says that when they take the stage, they're really going to blow everyone out of the water and that they're going to settle some scores along the way, too. She calls her team into the main studio and regales the team with the tale of the time she and Vivi spent at the ALDC and the evil pyramid that Abby used against her children. And she tells the dancers that they will be using a pyramid too, but not to worry because theirs will be a PPP, a perfectly positive pyramid. And she wheels over a flat screen TV.
Beep,
Kelly,
beep, 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 beep,
yep. Again, Kathy just says things and never hears them. Her voice is just a loud roaring in her own ears. She thinks everything she says is great, and most of the time it's like, ma'am, don't say that out loud around children. And the thing is, Kathy thinks she really does something here by using this TV for Pyramid because it's touch screen, so she gets to tap it to unveil every picture. But this is really giving the C class of pyramids because, listen, Kathy, just because something is more expensive does not make it better, okay? Kathy also, I think, inadvertently put Vivi at the bottom most spot in the pyramid. And she didn't really, like, I think she thinks that, like, oh, look, Vivi's first. But the first person on the pyramid is always the bottom. Like, they're the first is the worst in this case, ma'am. And you did that to Vivi. And Vivi's not the worst, okay?
I think
Stop.
she wanted it. I think she definitely wanted it framed as like, oh, you're first.
That's what I'm thinking she thought, but I'm just like, you understand that after watching a whole season, this is episode 1 of the new, and you're following the regular pyramid. We're trained to think that's the worst spot, and that's where you put Vivi. It doesn't matter if you tell us that your pyramid is positive, you put Vivi in the worst spot. Anyway, the whole thing is so avoidable. But really everyone's on the bottom row except for the one person who's at the top, who is a dancer named Erica, who Kathy tells us will have a solo. Kathy then tells the group that everyone's going to have a chance to be at the top of the pyramid, which I don't think actually happens if we pay attention to how long these particular dancers are on the show. As we say goodbye to Ohio, Kathy tells us that her team is going to do their best to make sure that when they take the stage, Abby will have heard them roar because they have heart and determination. Back in group rehearsal at the ALDC, Abby is yelling at Nia, which sparks a conversation up in dance jail. Kelly says that she can't believe how mean Abby was to Nia during Pyramid, like it was Nia's fault that Holly wasn't there. And much like Kathy, Holly's name has now been said the correct number of times to summon her, and she arrives in dance jail telling us in an interview that she's arriving here today already a bit concerned because Christy had called and told her that Abby was being very harsh and even threatening to replace Nia. Now, from what we saw, the inappropriate anger toward Nia and talk about replacement team members seemed pretty separate in Pyramid, but we also only see a little bit of what is filmed, and emotions were running high for everyone, so we don't know how things might have been taken, especially by little kids and overwhelmed, overly emotional moms.
But also, I bet that Christy may have known exactly what to say to Holly to get her. Like when you don't like that one teacher and you hear that one teacher said this thing to this student and you're like, oh my gosh, you'll never believe what they said, and you exaggerate it maybe just a little bit too to just.
I think honestly my thought process was maybe more that Nia, because she did not have her mom there, might have heard, just like Kelly heard the replacement talk, like, and she was like, does Abby maybe also mean she's going to replace my girls? Because now she's saying there's maybe going to be more than one replacement. Did Nia maybe also think that, like, wait, does that mean she's going to replace me because my mom can't be there? Or did Christy make the same jump as Kelly and be like, well, if Holly can't be here and it's our job to be here because we signed up to be on a show called Dance Moms, does that mean that Nia's spot might be in jeopardy? Like, all I'm saying is they might have made some leaps that might seem irrational if you're not in those heated moments. Melissa goes on to tell Holly that she's worried, not because of any of the other stuff, but because Nia's going to have a solo this weekend and Holly won't be at the competition with them. And on their own podcast, Christy and Kelly were like, I don't know why she was worried about this. She went on vacation 2 weeks when Maddie had solos last season and everything was fine. And I'm like, yeah, but do you think Abby and Gianna are going to be helping Nia? no. And Melissa loves Nia, and I think she's fully aware that Abby and Gia are not going to take care of Nia, and that Nia tends to get a little extra anxious when she has a solo, and Maddie doesn't. Holly heads down to the front desk to have a talk with Abby, and right away things do not get off on the right foot. Holly says that she came to make sure that everything is okay between the two of them because she's been hearing that things might not, but no. Abby cuts her off. She's given her the stink eye and everything, and you'd think that Holly ran over her favorite rhinestone headband and statement ring matching set the way that Abby is acting. Abby tells Holly that the moms were required to be here today, and Holly replies that for other moms who have more flexible schedules, dropping everything to come to the dance studio might be more feasible, but for their family, Holly works. And this devolves into, well, like I'd say an argument, but it's really just Abby arguing with herself. Abby says that she feels like she cares more about Nia's dancing than Holly does, and when Holly says she does care, Abby says, then show up and share your opinion, even though she just told Nia and Pyramid that all her mother does is talk, and share her opinion. And she asks why Nia's dad didn't stay, since he was the one who dropped Nia off today. But at the end of last season, when Maddie and Mackenzie's dad came, she told him to get the hell out of there because he made the girls nervous because no one else's dads show up. And when all of this fails to rile Holly up, she just goes all the way off the deep end and starts talking about how her own mom was always busy with work, and when she was young, that meant her dad took her to all the things, including the mother-daughter talk about getting her period, which sends Christy and Kelly up in dance jail into a full-on fit. She says this as though she's really like eating and leaving no crumbs. She really thinks she's making all of the points. But Holly just remains calm and looks around like, I'm sorry, when did I consent to talking about your period with you? When did I consent to this? And at this point, Holly's really grasping at any straw she can get her hands on, so she makes a dig at Nia's intelligence, implying that Nia needs supervision because she cannot handle things on her own. And this is ultimately what gets the response from Holly, who asks Abby, like, how dare you? And Abby tells Holly that she thinks that Holly thinks she's better than everyone because she has a doctorate, and she thinks that she just lords it over everyone. And Holly replies that really this is what Abby's ultimate problem is. She's intimidated by Holly because Holly does have her doctorate. And we know now that Holly hit the nail 100% right on the head because Abby just screams, "Bull!" like a petulant child before falling completely silent. And if you can render a person with narcissistic traits speechless, you have nailed them. We are not saying Abby has narcissistic personality, but we can recognize she does have some traits.
We can assess that entire interaction. She was literally throwing out things, seeing what was going to stick.
She just wanted supply for the supply.
And then once she got something, any sort of response from Holly, she grabbed it.
Yeah, she grabbed at it and she kept going with that. And then when she realized that that wasn't actually going to get her anywhere because what she'd said was giving Holly like actually what this is you're just at your own issue with your own insecurity, and they don't like that. They never like that. And it's really important, again, for us to point out the specific implication of Abby's targeting Nia's family in the specific way that she does here. Black families, again, are usually far more likely to be labeled as unloving, less caring, and less safe, and are often far more likely to be highly represented in social services and foster care.
Mm-hmm.
Black mothers who prioritize their own education and work, which we both know Holly did, can be viewed as cold or uncaring, and Black fathers, again, often presumed as not even involved in their children's lives, when actually Black fathers are much more likely to be involved in their child's lives. And what Abby is implying here just has so many layers that are systemically harmful and rooted in racism. And we also have to remember that Nia only represents one of her Black dancers. We don't know how many more children and families she was treating like this. The scene ends with Holly telling Abby not to be ignorant, and Lord, I wish that Abby would listen to her, but it just falls on deaf ears as Abby huffs right out of the doors. It's now the next day, and we join Holly and Nia on their way to grab a fun little drink together to discuss how things are going to go this weekend. I love getting a fun little drink. And in an interview, Holly tells us that she really doesn't want to tell Nia that she won't be able to go with her this weekend and that she doesn't know how Nia is going to handle it. Holly tells Nia that she has to go to work this weekend, and Nia says, "Are you positive that you can't miss work for just one day?" And it's so sad that Nia has to say this, but it's so cute. It reminds me of when Eliana said she was feeling defeated. Like, I love when babies use big words. Holly tells her that yes, she's pretty positive that she can't go. And she tells Nia that she's going to be sad to miss it, and Nia tells her that she's sad about it too. In an interview, Nia tells us that she's mainly feels sad that her mom's going to miss this because she finally has some dances that she actually really likes, and her mom's not going to see them. And this also makes me super sad in like my dance teacher heart because while a kid can't love every dance they do, especially if they're on a team and they're doing group numbers, the fact that it took her this long to get a solo that she liked, it just breaks my heart. You're supposed to love your solos.
Granted, it is based on Once on This Island, which if you know anything about...
Oh, I've got that in. Don't worry, we're getting there.
Okay.
But you're supposed to love your solos. Unless you're doing a fucking variation for your goddamn ballet exam, you're supposed to love your solos. They're just for you. Holly also tells Nia that she's going to talk to Miss Abby and make it very clear that if she has an issue with Mommy, she needs to talk to Mommy and not Nia, because what happened was not okay. So even though she won't technically be there, she's really going to be there. She is there. Mommy's there. And I love this. As they're leaving the snack shop, Holly tells us that she's feeling really frustrated by this whole situation with Abby, and that it makes her unsure about wanting to continue on the team. This is now 2 moms in the same episode who've said they don't know that they want to do this anymore because she just keeps seeing Nia give 110% and working so hard, but that she also keeps seeing it never be enough for Abby. It's now a bit later in the day, and Abby is getting ready to start her open call audition, and this is really just a front from production because they had already cast 2 girls who were at this audition, one to join the team full time and one to be an on and off foil for Brooke. Which brings us to the very unforgettable duo of Leslie and Peyton. Peyton, who we love, will be brought on to be Brooke's foil very soon, but for today we learn that she's 14 and that she has been studying with Abby for 4 years. Her mom, Leslie, who we don't love as much as we love Peyton, says that they came to the audition today, which she thinks is ludicrous because they have been here, or ridiculous, sorry, because they've been here for years already. So Peyton should just be on the team instead of having to stand out here with all these strangers. And Leslie, to me, seems like a person who was really born for reality TV. Her attitude is so outrageous, and according to Christy and Kelly, this is, the way she is on the show is not too far off from what she was like to deal with in real life. And Peyton, to me, always just seems like a normal teenager. She seems to love the girls and she loves dancing, but she tends to end up in situations where her like normal teenage behavior gets blown out of context because she's dealing with someone like Abby, and then having an overly confrontational mom like Leslie tends to make those situations much worse for her. So yeah, the other thing for us to know about Peyton is she's really tall, and I think she, to this day, is one of the tallest girls from Dance Moms. Up in Dance Jail, all of our regularly scheduled dance moms are there, along with the moms of all the girls who are down in the auditions. Kelly tells us in an interview that she looks around and sees all these new faces with them, and she's just thinking that it's going to be really hard imagining having any of them join their group because they're just a really tight-knit group. And Christy tells us that she's also feeling nervous about having anyone new join their team. But for her, she says it's because she's worried that that person might be like Kacie, because she already feels like she has to constantly be looking over one of her shoulders when it comes to Melissa. And if the new person is anything like that, it's not like she can look over both of her shoulders at one time. And Abby loved to promote this narrative that the moms on the team were mean to everyone and that they drove people out of her studio. And I think these 2 interviews might have fed into that, but I think it's really important to note that what happened to the team with Kacie, specifically how Kacie went along with production to treat the moms, they're going to be understandably wary of new people coming in because for them, this wasn't a team for a TV show. They were real friends. Their kids were real friends. And this was their real life. Like, their group probably felt very sacred to them, and having people come in and act this way, be acting at all, probably felt very traumatizing to them. And they're traumatized from having Kathy. Now they're like, they've got walls built up. Down in Studio A, the audition is in full swing, and in an interview, Abby is explaining to us what kind of dancer she is looking for, but I don't think she was really allowed any say in what kind of people were cast on the show. But she does tell us that she doesn't want another Mackenzie whining or another Brooke brooding, so we know she doesn't want someone too old or too young. And as it gets down to the final four, Abby cuts Peyton in a rather dramatic fashion, and up in dance jail, Kelly tells Leslie that she knows that Leslie won't want to hear this, but that Peyton is really just too tall for the team. And Leslie retorts that they should put her on it in some other way. And when I tell you that I would die to hear Leslie elaborate on this, like, but what do you mean? I mean it.
Do you
really
want to just
know,
like lay across a couple of legs
right?
and be a table?
Right? Do you want, or are you saying she has to be the featured dancer every time? Like, I want to know what you mean. Abby makes her final selection, and a canon event has occurred in the Dance Moms universe. My little Kendall has joined the team. Kendall tells us that she's 8, which makes her the second youngest on the team, and I do think that that's a really important thing that often gets overlooked. She is in the middle of the ages between Maddie and Mackenzie. She tells us herself in an interview that she believes in herself and that she can show Abby what she can do and that she's worthy of being on the team. And this also means that Kendall's mom, Jill, has made her entrance, and we can't go back, but I kind of wish we could. I'd date Kendall, but not Jill. And Jill tells us that she's excited for Kendall and that she knows that she's just going to be amazing on this team and that the team is going to love her. And Abby makes a big deal out of telling Kendall that none of this is going to be easy, that she's joining a legacy and not a dance team. And she also tells Kendall that she's going to be on probation for the first several weeks. Remember the word probation. Like, don't get me wrong. I know that all of this is beyond Abby. Like, but seriously, why are you saying this to an 8-year-old? Like, this is stuff that you tell the parent at the front desk. Like, you have a meeting with the parent. You don't need to say this to Kendall right after she just finished the audition. I'd barely be okay with you saying this to a 15, 16-year-old. I don't think this is an approach you should use with any child, let alone someone that young. Abby goes on to tell Jill that there's a competition this weekend, and she also tells her that Kendall has only 3 days to prepare, and with that, she dismisses the team, but she asks Jill to stay behind so she can tell her that she needs to see Kendall right after school tomorrow for a private lesson. And as the two talk, Leslie re-enters the dance studio. Leslie tells Abby that she wants some things explained to her, and Jill cannot get out of there fast enough, and I do not blame Jill for this at all. I would run. This quickly devolves into the inverse of the argument that Abby was having with Holly just the day before, with Abby now playing the part of the reasonable party, which we rarely get to see, and she's being screamed at by someone who truly only wants what they want, no matter how unreasonable or illogical it is.
Didn't she have the older kids group competing at the time too?
Oh, she has many teams. This is just one of Abby's teams because you can only.
So why this specific team if she's capable of competing with people her size?
Because Leslie was so sure she wanted Peyton to be on TV, but Christy and Kelly have said that she didn't want to do any of the other work required for it. Like, Christy and Kelly would say, like, you understand that when you're on this team, like, we don't really get breaks. Like, when we're back here in Pittsburgh, we're not resting. Like, our kids are in rehearsal all the time and we're having to do press. Like, it's not as fun and glamorous as you think it is. It's a lot of work. And Leslie wanted the attention, but she did not want the work that went along with it. Leslie demands to know why Peyton wasn't on the team, and Abby says that, like, she's too tall. She's matured too much in her dancing. She can't do cutesy anymore. And Leslie says, but, like, we're good customers. And Abby says, I never said you weren't good customers, and this has nothing to do with that. Leslie says, I thought you were the great Abby Lee Miller, that you could make anything work. And Abby says, like, right. And that's why I have Peyton dancing with the more advanced team, because that's where she works. That's where she fits. And when none of this, like, works to subdue Leslie says, just tell us what we have to do. And Abby says, like, you'd have to cut your kid in half. And And Leslie spins all the way out into a tantrum now, continuing to argue with herself, and Abby's just standing there saying, like, Leslie, breathe. Leslie, calm down.
I do think, though, that it could be a valuable lesson for Leslie specifically, but also for Peyton. Like, you'll go to an audition and they'll look at you and there's just a look that they're looking for, unfortunately. And they'll look at her and be, she's too tall. I don't even want to see her dance. And they'll send her out the door.
Yes. Like, and again, this in no way makes up for the insidious awfulness of what she did to Holly earlier, but it is just kind of nice to watch Abby have to deal with someone behaving just like her. I just wish she'd learned from it. Leslie eventually tires herself out and she just stomps out of the studio, still telling Abby that she better find something for Peyton. Solo, duet, trio, find her something. And with that, we head into day 3. It's the next day, and Abby tells us that we're going to be running everyone's solos today, and that everyone's going to be great, and no one's going to leave early, and Abby doesn't care if their feet bleed, and it's giving very much like, and everybody's going to have fun! Just a heads up that at least two of the solos this week, Maddie and Chloe's for sure, have different music and different titles than what is used on the show. It's interesting. We also found out that Kendall's costume was one that was reused from her old studio. We don't know about her music. But Maddie's up first, and we learn that she'll be doing a musical theater routine about getting her big break on Broadway called Jubilation. And Abby also reminds us that, again, this is going to be a tough year for Maddie because she's moving up an age division, and she'll be one of the youngest. Nia's solo rehearsal is next, and she's also doing a musical theater piece inspired by the musical Once on This Island called This One Girl. And Abby tells us that this number is very tropical and very calypso inspired, and that the costume fits her beautifully, and she gets to do lots of acro in it. And during rehearsal, Abby tells her that she doesn't want any trouble with her mom about this dance because it's not an ethnic dance. And as much as I would love, as much as I would love to say, we would love to say on this podcast that this is just a straightforward great dance for Nia, just like all the other girls got, we can't fucking say that because it's not.
For anybody who knows, Once on This Island is essentially
black musical.
It is like the Black Little Mermaid.
So as much as this number is leaps and bounds better than what Nia's been given over and over again, even before the show, it's not Natty of the Jungle, thank fucking God. Chloe's dance is just about her achieving her dreams. Maddie's dance is just about her finally making it to Broadway. And Nia's dance is ultimately still about her being black. Like, it's giving, like, forced inclusion. And Abby saying that it's not an ethnic dance, like, just proves that Abby has no business teaching ethnic dances because she doesn't know what that means. It'd be one thing if it was actually inclusive and meant to reflect Nia as a person, but it never is. Mm-mm. And again, I'm glad that Nia loves this dance. Thank God it's finally something Nia likes. But Nia also likes other things, and she's never given those. In interview, Abby makes a big deal all over again about Holly still isn't here today, and Holly's a big no-show, and I guess at least we can be happy for the very, very fine silver lining that Abby is just saying this to us in an interview and not to Nia in her rehearsal. Chloe's rehearsal is up next, and for her solo, surprise, surprise, she'll be doing a musical theater routine, and hers is called Dreams, and Abby tells us that this is a perfect routine for Chloe because she has a lot of big dreams and she'll have to do a lot of hard work to make them come true. And she also tells us that she thinks that Chloe's gotten a bit of a big head since the music video, which I have a hard time believing. And like, but also even if it was true, that's so age appropriate. And she also says that everyone is just going to be watching and waiting for her to mess up and like wait to tell on just yourself and say the quiet part out loud, Abby, because we also know the only person who ever wants Chloe to mess up is you. Back in dance jail, the moms discuss Jill joining the team, and Melissa says that she thinks that Jill is nice, and Chrissy has to remind her that she also thought that Kathy was nice, so maybe she's not the best judge of character, and they all laugh. I love these little moments where we see them really being friends. Melissa goes on to say that she's just going to try and give Jill the benefit of the doubt, but that she did hear that Jill drove some people away from their old studio. And Kelly tells us that with what Melissa is telling them about Jill, she's worried that she's going to be a crazy dance mom. Oh, Kelly, if you only knew. Christy says that she thinks it's interesting that Jill only showed up after they booked the music video outside of show speak. Jill actually lived very close to the ALDC in real life, but drove nearly an hour away to Studio 19 right up until the show blew up and became a big deal. And then she appeared at the ALDC with gifts for production. Jill arrives and introduces herself to everyone. And in interview, Christy tells us that she just loves Jill's voice. She thinks it's a very 900 number. It's time for Kendall's solo rehearsal, and down in the studio, we see that Kendall is also doing a solo this weekend. That is also in the musical theater category. Gee, it's almost like there's a pattern going on or something. Abby tells us that she's giving Kendall the opportunity of a lifetime with this solo because she's joining a legacy. She's going to be one of Abby's kids. But Abby tells us that what she's really trying to do is just put the kid on stage and see if she's going to sink or swim. And like, wow, Abby, what a weird way to say welcome to the team. Back up in dance jail, Jill is getting the welcome wagon rolled out from the moms who want to know why she went to the other studio to begin with if she's always lived so close to the ALDC and why she really wants to be here. Jill tells them that she always heard like not great things about Abby, so she never wanted to come here. And Jill does have two older daughters who are like, Kendall's the youngest by quite a bit, I think like 7 or 8 years. So she would have taken the other girls to another dance studio for a long time. And in an interview, Jill tells us that she's feeling some tension between herself and Christy, and she really isn't sure why. She would have thought that Christy would have wanted to be more welcoming. And honestly, I'm not surprised, like, extra that Christy specifically isn't being very welcoming. It's not like Jill would have known any of this, but we got a glimpse into Christy's childhood at the end of last season. And most people who didn't have a stable growing up tend to be slow to warm to new people, especially people who come on as strongly as Jill. The moms continue to talk, with Christy, Jill, and Melissa having a little heated discussion about the ALDC having beaten Jill's old studio and the girls' individual head-to-head records. And the convo ends with Jill saying that she's not going to pretend like she's not there to win, because if they're going to be honest, all of them care about winning. In an interview, Jill tells us that she really doesn't care what the other moms say. She and Kendall are staying. Christy tells us that she thinks that Melissa and Jill are either going to join up as besties or they're going to be like beta fish and kill each other. It's now the day before the competition, and the girls are running the group number. Abby, of course, is screaming at them, and she tells us that she wanted this special prop for Mackenzie to go in for this dance, like a box that the Barbie doll comes in. Abby seems to refuse to say the word Barbie, and I don't know if it was licensing or what, but she just keeps saying the doll, like the doll that comes in from the store, but we all know she means the Barbie doll. It's weird. Anyway, she's upset because Melissa hasn't finished the prop and they're leaving tomorrow. She's also upset because the girls don't have the dance down and she's still having to go over different parts with them, and she has no idea how they're going to be able to go on stage if they don't know the dance. And last on Abby's list of woes is that Brooke has gone upstairs to talk to her mother when she only asked to get a drink of water. I mean, seriously, how dare she? Paige lets it slip that Brooke wants to go to her school football game, so age appropriate, but so not going to fly with Abby. And I can't imagine what middle school must have been like with like texting and social media, because when I was my age, if I was at dance rehearsal and there was something else going on, it's not like my friends were going to be bothering me and being like, look, here's this picture of what you're missing. I wasn't going to know until I saw them the next time. They're like, you missed all this. And I'd be like, man, that sucks. Whereas like every time Brooke goes into the den to get a drink of water, she's going to see her phone lighting up and being like, I was supposed to be there an hour ago. Of course, now that Abby is mad at Brooke for one thing, she is going to yell about everything she can to get Brooke upset because, you know, logic. And since Brooke has been dealing with Abby her whole life, it's going to take, you know, a fair amount to get her there. So Abby starts yelling at Brooke that she can go ahead and go to the football game. She'll just have Peyton in here to replace her. Brooke doesn't cry about that because also Brooke does not care if you replace her. She doesn't give a shit. So when this doesn't work, she tells Brooke to stop writing on her hands. It's trashy. Which, if you pause and read what Brooke had written on her hand, it said choreographed dance for Veterans Day assembly. So what a shitty thing to yell at a kid for, Abby, especially since you say Brooke is lazy and never does anything extra for dance. At this point, Brooke breaks down and starts crying, and up in dance jail, Kelly notices and says, none of this is funny, but how Kelly says this is it's just, it gets me every time. She's like, oh, she made her cry. She's a bitch. And it just, I love, what would we do without Christy and Kelly? We'd never make it through this show.
No, we love them.
We love them so much. In an interview, Abby is yelling about how Brooke is crying like a 6-year-old and how she should know that on this team, it doesn't matter if it takes 2 hours or 4 hours, you stay till it's perfect. And I wanted to know, Ray, what you thought about this teaching approach for kids and if you think it's appropriate.
So we learn best through rest. So you learn what it is that you need to learn. You're introduced to it initially, run it through a few times, and then you go to sleep. You rest. And your brain will be processing that information so that you can do it even better the next day. So tiring them out is not going to help them because their brain will just be trying to recover rather than process the new information.
Up in dance jail, Kelly is now having an existential dance crisis.
When is she never?
Girl, but like that, I was going to say, like, girl, haven't we all? Like, anyone who's danced even a little in their life has been in your shoes. She says that she can't think for the life of her why she brings her kids here and why her kids want to come here. She says that Paige has been screamed at since they walked in the door today, and now Brooke's getting yelled at for having writing on her hands. She says that this is why Brooke is always telling her that she doesn't want to dance anymore, and she wants to know what the point of any of this and all of this is. Down in the studio, Abby dismisses the girls, except for Brooke, who she says, Brooke, get over here. Kelly goes in and tells Brooke calmly that, like, they need to leave. And Abby says, oh, so she's not trying her costume on? And Kelly says that, like, they need to go. Rehearsal was supposed to end at 6:30, and it's now after 9. And then in an interview recounting the conversation, Abby says that Kelly was yelling, your schedule was off. Your rehearsal went over. Abby, you're wrong. And, like, it's just, I genuinely don't know if Abby conflated Kelly with Leslie in this moment, or if it's her narcissistic tendencies, or what. Because if it was her narcissistic tendencies, does she really think that the conversation happened this way and that Kelly was saying these things to her, or is she trying to garner sympathy while forgetting that this whole interaction was caught on videotape?
I just don't think she cared.
Abby goes on to tell Brooke that she needs to remember that she's the role model of the group and that she doesn't need 5 other kids crying just because Brooke's crying. And I want to know what we think of making older kids automatic role models as like a blanket application.
From a developmental perspective, unless the kid is like ready for that responsibility, they're still a kid too. Like their frontal lobes are still a long ways. Like they still have half their age, like twice their age before their frontal lobes are even fully developed to comprehend like what that responsibility means. In some cases, it can be a little bit different in being like, okay, here's your job and I need this from you because, you know, we all are part of a team and this is your job. It can help kind of develop that responsibility, but it's limited. It's very limited. And Brooke is like practically the same age as these kids. And so you're expecting her to act like an adult when she is like 12.
Well, and Abby also never gives her any actual leadership duties. She makes her behave like the leader, but never gives her any of the perks that would come with that. And Brooke had said, and I think she still says to this day, she's like, I never wanted to be a role model. I never signed up for that. Kelly goes on to ask Abby if she's upset at Brooke for wanting to leave. Why is she yelling at her about having writing on her hand? Like, what do the two have to do with one another? And what business is it of Abby's anyway? And Abby retorts that it's not her business, and it's not her job to tell Kelly's kids anything, and it's not her job to tell Kelly's kids to keep their feet off the furniture either, so she's not going to do that anymore. And while I think it's important for us to remember that Kelly and Abby's families had a long friendship outside of dance, and I think that that's what Abby was trying to reference poorly here, I also think that when you have a personal relationship with the child, which happens very regularly in small private institutions, I think it's imperative that you do your best to keep that separate. And Abby's not doing that at all. She doesn't give a shit. She's bringing the personal right into the classroom and doing it right in front of everyone in like a verbally violent way. The thing about how Abby runs her studio is Brooke had to stand there and take this. There was no recourse. There was no, she can't even walk away and take a break. She just has to stand there. And then, worse, Abby plays the music and Brooke has to dance and look happy. Abby goes on to tell us in an interview that Kelly isn't teaching her kids to be responsible young adults at home, which I think is a particularly weird thing to say given what was written on Brooke's friggin' hand. Like,
school assembly.
An extra thing for her to do at school that's related to dance. She's being responsible about both school, an extra school thing, and an extra dance thing. And you're calling her irresponsible.
And she's not a young adult. Like, she's nowhere near the developmental level of a young adult.
It's now competition day, and Abby is upset because she thinks the costumes and the props aren't ready, and I would like to take this time to remind Abigail Miller that those things are her job. And yes, I know the production messed with a lot of things, but as the Abby Lee and Abby Lee Dance Company, it is your job to have come up with a suitable backup plan that would not only work, but that would have satisfied you to have on stage. Meanwhile, on the bus, all the moms are worried about is Nia. All the moms. Like, none of the other moms, not just Holly, none of the other moms are paying attention to any of the other kids. Holly's got her in her seat situated. All the moms are now gathered around her, fully focused on Nia and how she's going to be feeling this weekend. Not Jill, but Jill didn't really count as one of the moms yet. Holly tells Nia that she might not be with her this weekend, but she's going to have so many mommies taking care of her. And all the moms are nodding very seriously, looking at Nia with like so much love that I just want to burst. And this, to me, is what a village looks like. And it's also why no reboot of Dance Moms will ever truly succeed in the way that the original did.
All the moms like view the kids as all of their kids. Like, it's literally like a village. It's a village. They've all adopted each other's children, basically, not legally, but
At one point they do. Melissa takes full guardianship of Kalani.
The point is, like, you need that. Like, if you couldn't go to your own mom, you have this other mom that you can go to.
Nia tells us in an interview that she's sad that her mom won't be there, but she knows she has to deal with it. And Holly tries to exit the bus without crying, but then Nia asks for one last hug, and we can see Holly start to tear up. At this point, Holly goes over to talk to Abby, who is sitting in her car, and I should at this point mention that it was snowing fairly heavily at this time, and Holly knocks on Abby's window and asks to speak with her about leaving Nia with the team and with Abby for the weekend. And Abby refuses to get out. Holly continues to, talk through the window, and then Abby starts to roll her window down, but realizing that the snow will get in the car, she rolls it right back up and covers her face with her hands, fully refusing to engage. Holly tells Abby calmly that she has to go to work and that she's trusting Nia with her, and she also says that Nia really wants to do well for the team this weekend. And then she leaves and tells us in an interview that Abby wouldn't even do her the courtesy of getting out of the car to speak with her, and that she feels like Abby has no respect for her. Don't worry, though, Holly, because Abby doesn't really have respect for anyone. We're pretty sure. Abby tells us in her own interview that she's had it with Holly, and Holly only wants to do things for Holly, and that nothing is ever about Nia. Abby, what did you sitting in your car while Nia helped load the bus? What does that have anything to do with Nia? What are you doing that's for Nia? As the bus is driving to North Carolina, Jill presents Abby with a Chanel perfume gift set and says that it's for letting them join in on her little family. And now gifting is going to be a trend with Jill. And again, while I think it's important to highlight that some of the gifts were provided by production, particularly a certain bench that we'll get to eventually, I did learn from the Back to the Bar podcast with Christy and Kelly that Jill's gifting extended to before she was ever on camera as well. So are we surprised? No. Is it an interesting thing to find out? Absolutely. Jill tells us that she wanted to give Abby her gift in front of everyone because she wants everyone to know that she's serious about this. And like, serious about what, ma'am? Serious about what? What are you talking? What? Serious about gift giving? Serious about being on the team? This doesn't make sense. Kelly tells us that Jill bringing a present just reminds her of Melissa, and Christy makes a joke about Abby giving Abby a weight loss subscription as a gift. And I do think that it's easy to strike out at people who exhibit narcissistic tendencies in larger bodies about their weight. Abby is always nitpicking the kids' bodies and the moms' bodies, so the moms want to get back at her, but like fat jokes are never okay, and a bad person who's fat isn't bad because they're fat, and we absolutely must not conflate the two. We arrive at the competition, and as we get ready for solos, Abby starts giving one of her absolutely world famous pep talks. She starts by yelling at Chloe that everyone will know who she is, so she better not make a mistake. And if she does, she better cover it because everyone is just waiting for her to mess up. Ma'am, projecting much? Chloe tells us that it can be really hard to keep Abby out of your head, and that sometimes she'll just be at the mall and she'll hear Abby out of nowhere, which I fully believe Abby out of nowhere would make a great band name.
All you hear, all the lyrics are, "Have you learned nothing?
Point those feet!" Then Abby tells Kendall that she better not forget that she's still on probation, so what she does out there counts today. And Kendall tells us that she doesn't really know what probation means, but that she thinks that Abby just keeps using the word because she wants her to bring it, but she was already going to bring it anyway. And it's so sweet to see Kendall have all this confidence in the first episode before Abby pounded it all the way out of her. I love seeing like confident Kendall. I wish it lasted. Next, Abby tells Maddie that she's in a new age group, so she needs to go out there and bring it and do what she was trained to do. But Abby doesn't say anything to Nia, which I cannot decide. Like, absolutely can't choose whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Maddie takes the stage and she does well, but it would have been really nice to see it with the real music because musical theater pieces are so like music and lyric driven that there are parts of the dance that are so incongruous with what the TV is playing. Abby tells us that Maddie told her story very well for the judges and really drove home some of the extra touches. Maddie tells us that she noticed that she got a lot of applause and she felt good, so she thinks she did very well. Chloe is up next, and again, I really wish we could see it with the intended music. She does seem to do well once she's finished her number, and Chloe tells us that she loves dancing, and when she's on stage, she just feels like she's doing what she was meant to be doing, and it's so cute to hear how much they loved dance when they were little, and it's sad to me that they had to lose this passion because of such an awful fucking person. Abby tells us that Chloe did well, but that she went the wrong way on her big turn section and ended up facing the opposite of where she was supposed to be, but that she thinks that Chloe covered it well and that she thinks she had a lot of confidence on stage. And it's nice to hear Abby say mostly positive things about Chloe. It's not usually what we get, especially if Chloe makes a mistake. Nia tells us that she was very nervous right before she goes on stage because her mom wasn't there. And once Nia takes the stage, I did notice her stutter in one section. She did recover and keep going. But she tells us herself that she thinks that this is the best dance she's ever had. So I'm really glad that she felt good in her performance. Abby even gives her a big hug after she's done and tells her she did it, no mommy and everything. I wish she would quit harping on the fact that Holly is there. Nia does not need the reminder. That's like a child being dropped off at daycare with separation anxiety and you just keep saying like, great, you went to the potty even though your mom's not here. Like, shut up. Abby tells us that she was proud of Nia and that she thinks she did a great job, which, like, again, it's nice to hear Abby being positive about any of the girls.
I noticed that a lot in this episode. Like, even from the beginning, I was like, wow, she was actually, like, kind of encouraging.
Which, like, for how much she screamed at the kids in this episode, I'm like, how far in the future did you have to record these interviews, and what did they give you to drink? It's finally time for Kendall to make her ALDC debut, and let me say that if she really did only have a week or 3 days to get the solo together, she fucking nails it and deserves all the flowers. Kelly tells us, though, that from the way Jill had been talking, she expected Kendall to come out and really blow everyone out of the water. But that while Kendall was a good dancer, she doesn't think that she's at the same level as Chloe and Maddie. And I don't love comparing kids, but I kind of understand why Kelly would say this, because Jill does talk a big game. And I don't think that that's always helpful for Kendall. Abby tells us that she thinks that Kendall looked great in her costume, but that nothing else was really there yet, and that she looked nervous on the stage. We had 2 solo awards, and Nia takes 4th place. Yay, top 5 for Nia. I'm so happy for her. And she tells us that she was really excited about her award and that things ended up turning out okay without her mom. Chloe tells us that she really hopes she wins 1st place because she doesn't want to let her fans down. And again, I think this is another moment where they tried to catch the kids in saying something that fed into their bratty storyline. But because of how Chloe says things and because of who Chloe is as a person, it doesn't work. She's just cute. Just like what happened with Maddie. Maddie's just cute. Didn't work. They're not rotten. Chloe and Maddie both take 1st in their categories. Chloe wins in the junior category and Maddie wins for pre-junior. So this competition, they weren't competing head to head. Chloe says that it feels good to win 1st for the very first solo of the dance season because it's always nice to start off on a good note. She's so cute. And then Maddie tells us that she's really proud of both herself and Chloe because they both won and they outscored some 16-year-olds in the overalls, which she thinks is a pretty good achievement for us too. These girls are so cute and I love their friendships. Kendall unfortunately does not get called for any awards, but we don't get like a snarky remark from Abby right away about it, so that's nice. Back in the dressing room, the girls are getting ready for the group dance, and Abby starts by telling Kendall the corrections she needs to make from her solo. And Jill becomes very worried that Abby is judging Kendall based on her performance as far as her probation goes. And like, it makes sense for Kendall not to know what probation is or how it works, but this is exactly why I said that Abby should have explained the probation process in a parent meeting at the front desk, because someone clearly needed to explain how probation works to Jill, because she doesn't seem to get that being judged on your performance is exactly how probation works. In an interview, Jill tells us that she doesn't like being on probation. She wants her daughter just to be on the team already, and that, like, just buckle up, friends, because that's going to be a running theme with Jill.
There's a lot of running themes with Jill.
Oh, yes. Meanwhile, Kendall is sitting back at her makeup mirror crying, and she says that she wasn't prepared. And as much as Jill is saying she doesn't want to be on probation is a running theme for Jill, Kendall saying she didn't have time to prepare is going to be a running theme for Kendall. And this is not something that I think makes Kendall whiny or bratty at all, though production will certainly try to frame it that way. And as much as like Kendall and Jill might have liked aspects of being on the show, I really don't think that Kendall was a person, not that any child is set up for the environment that this show created, but I really don't think that Kendall was the kind of kid that was set up to ever learn a dance in 3 days. This stresses her out. And she's not the only child that's this way. Paige is very similar, and so is Lily Ketchman. And Lily is a very advanced dancer, and she volunteered to do this. She wanted to do this, but when she was in the environment, especially when she came back for the last season, she found herself having massive panic attacks. Some kids are just not, they need longer periods of time and they need more rest, like Rachel said, to like really let things settle into their bodies. And this setup does not allow for any of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where like kids know their limits and they can meet their limits. And when they're given permission to verbalize it, then they're not having those outbursts or panic attacks or whatever it is, because they're like, I know my limit. I'm going to get upset if I'm pushed beyond my limit. And we need to listen to that.
Jill tells Kendall that she was prepared in her 900 number voice, and Abby tells Kendall she needs to suck it up and save those tears for her pillow in her room by herself. And that she needs to realize she's a healthy, lucky little girl, and she needs to start acting like it because she really has nothing to cry about, and that she's just going to humiliate herself. I really wish that someone would tell Abby the same thing the next time she cries, because Abby never applies any of the same expectations to herself as she applies to the children.
Nope.
And maybe if she did, she'd realize how unrealistic and ridiculous the expectations she has for other people are. Because none of this is appropriate.
It's rules for thee, not for me.
The girls are getting ready for the group dance, and Abby starts having another rousing pep talk where she tells the girls that they've been on a break for a while, so they're rusty and they have to pull themselves together because all of them, even Kenzie, are too old to go out there and be cute, which does not even make a lick of damn sense because she gave them a dance that is nothing but cute, and she never let Kenzie go anywhere without fucking pigtails. This week you literally have her portraying a fucking Barbie doll. I'd say make it make sense, but she's not capable.
That's like telling a dog not to bark. Like, you can't tell.
No, it's literally like telling a dog to stop being a dog dressed in a costume that you dressed the dog in. That's what this is. None of the other girls in this dance, mind you, have pigtails. They all have a regular ponytail with a bow on. But no, Mackenzie, the one who has to be in a fucking box, which so it makes the least amount of sense for her to have these things sticking out of the fucking sides of her head. Nope, Kenzie's gotta have pigtails. But stop being cute, Mackenzie. You're too old. Just as the girls get called to the stage, Abby yells to them that they just won a national title, so they better not go from the top to the bottom in one performance. And while they're walking to the stage, Brooke tells us that she feels like there's a lot of pressure on them to win this week because they won nationals, and she feels like they just have to keep winning every week now until they get back to nationals, so they'll be good enough to win at nationals again. And to me, this reminds me of kids who work really, really hard to improve in one area at school, and they finally get there and they get that A on their test or their assignment, and their family responds like, well, now that we know you can get an A on this, you need to be getting A's on everything. And the kid starts feeling like overwhelmingly daunted by expectations instead of feeling encouraged and celebrated for the work that they did and the accomplishment that they achieved. And this is fucking dance class we're talking about. Kenzie tells us that she's really excited for this group dance because she's dancing with the big girls and she's playing a doll that's trapped in the box until the girls come and let her out. And Abby, how could you ever tell this child to stop being cute? She is the embodiment. She is darling, and we love her. The girls take the stage, and they do seem to do well, although Abby always seems to give the girls like a really busy routine at the start of the season, and I mean busy like a pattern can be busy. I know because we've heard Abby say before she thinks this hides mistakes, but personally to me, anytime I watch this kind of dance, to me the mistakes always stick out a whole lot more because the number always seems so frantic, and the kids are always like, yeah. And it seems like it would be so much harder to clean in a short span, and I never know why she does this. We head to group awards, and Paige tells us that she thinks that they did really good together in this dance because everyone was really committed to acting like a doll. And the girls take first place, and Abby tells us that she guesses that cute still works in North Carolina. And I'll leave that up to you to tell us whether or not that's accurate, Ray, because that's your neck of the woods.
I mean, I personally think so, but I also work with some really adorable children, so I might be a little bit biased.
She also says that the performance was not good enough for her because nothing is ever going to be good enough for her. Well, that means you're going to be miserable, Abby, and that's just on you, I guess. Back in the dressing room, Abby is not celebrating the girls' win, though. She's yelling at them because, duh. And she tells them that she told them no more sloppy groups. She goes, Brooke, I told you, you're too old for cute. Ma'am, we've been over this. You sent her out there to be a doll. I don't know what you wanted. Again, I know Abby can't take responsibility, but this is wild to me. She gave them a dance that was about being cute and that lent itself to sloppiness. Like, both of those things were right there. And like she still has the audacity to be surprised and upset.
And let's be fair, Brooke is adorable, okay?
She also yells at Brooke for looking across at Chloe to see what comes next in the dance when she's the oldest and should be the leader. And I was going to say, like, I can tell you as a dancer that this becomes kind of a reflex, so much so that you often don't realize when you're doing it because you usually rehearse in a room with lots of mirrors right in front of you and you're used to being able to see everyone. But then when you get on stage, not just the mirrors aren't there, but like it's usually kind of black in front of you because you have all those lights and darkness, and your eyes, like your body tries to make up for what used to be there, and so your eyes will just kind of dart around to like look over to make sure you're where you're supposed to be in regards to your line with the other dancers. But apparently this wasn't just not done as a reflex. Abby used to encourage her kids to do this, telling her kids to do this, and then she had the audacity to yell at them for doing it. She also tells Nia that she wasn't even dancing, she was just standing there. And I went back and rewatched the dance, and I don't know what the hell Abby could have been looking at, but it sure as shit could not have been Nia, because Nia was fucking serving, okay? She seemed to love the crap out of this dance. Her facials and her enthusiasm of movement was some of the best on the whole stage. She seemed to love this dance. But it also just could have been Abby had to say something to solidify that narrative that Nia's a weak link. Abby tells the girls that it's back to the drawing board tomorrow with a whole new dance, and then they pan around the room, and the girls just look utterly defeated. Mackenzie looks like she's about to cry, but they won first place. Like, this is awful. Kelly tells Abby that she's the one who's putting pressure on them to learn a new dance every 3 days, which, like, we know it's really what the show wanted. As much as I dislike Abby, I really don't think she would have done a new dance every week of her own volition. A, it's a lot of work, and B, that's nuts. Abby asks why she's the only one who gets aggravated when the kids can't do it, and Kelly says that it's because she's the only one who hasn't had kids. And I have to say that I wholeheartedly disagree with this statement. I think Abby would have had the exact same outlandish standards for her own children if she had had them. And why do I think that? Because my own birth mother was someone who was exactly like this. And I also know plenty of people who don't have children of their own and who are wonderful with children instinctually. But Kelly, having said this, sets Abby all the way off, and she says that she may not have kids of her own, but she had parents, and if they gave her one look, she knew. Which a lot of people from Abby's past have actually said Abby was kind of a brat growing up, so I don't think Abby is, like, knowing herself in this moment.
So being a therapist who works almost exclusively with kids, and having some parents who have inquired of my expertise in, do you have children? Having children and knowing how to raise children are two different things. I often think internally with my inside head voice. If you were the perfect parent and you knew what to do, you wouldn't be bringing them to me. I know probably more about child development than any of the parents that I work with, unless they are in a similar. I have studied this. Like, it's not that they don't know. It's not that I think that they're stupid. It's that I know more than they do because I've studied them. So you don't have to have kids to know how to raise them and train them up and be a good parent. Like, anybody can give birth to kids, but not everybody can raise kids.
Abby goes on to tell Kelly that rehearsal from now on is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 4:30 to 9:30 p.m., and she better get used to it. And while production edits what happens following this very heavily to make it look like they just get into an argument about how Kelly pays her bill at the studio, and then Kelly calls Abby a misogynistic, sexually explicit slur clean out of nowhere. What actually happened is that Abby made remarks of an explicit nature about Kelly's mom in front of everyone, and this includes Kelly's kids, which would be the grandchildren of Kelly's mom. And the thing is, like, the extra layer is, not only are these, these families are friends, Kelly's mom used to do, like, free catering for Abby's dance recitals, like, every year. There are these things called Pittsburgh cookie tables, and Kelly's mom would make that for Abby's dance recital every year. Never asked for a penny, never asked for supplies, just did it. And Abby still just whipped this out and said these things in front of Kelly and her kids, not to mention everyone else, just to get at Kelly. And, like, look, do we endorse calling someone sexist, sexually degrading names at all on this podcast? No. But is it understandable that Kelly lost her cool and said things that she shouldn't have in this instance? 100%. Because the girls get ushered out of the room, thankfully, and Melissa and Christy sarcastically tell Jill, welcome to the team, and Jill tells us that she and Kendall have never experienced anything like that before. which Christy said herself on the Back to the Bar podcast that she doesn't really buy that after having spent time at Kendall's old studio herself. She says that they have moms there that are just as crazy, if not crazier, than the ALDC moms, and that the drama doesn't begin to touch the drama that happened at the ALDC. Out in the lobby, Jill asks Melissa why Abby and Kelly let their fights escalate to that level, and Melissa says she doesn't really know, but that Jill should never trust Christy and Kelly because they'll stab her in the back. And the episode ends with Jill telling us that she thinks the only person she can trust on the team is Melissa, and Melissa and Jill solidify their newfound friendship by saying that they'll stick up for one another if Christy and Kelly pick on them. And Christy and Kelly are back in the dressing room, packing up, completely oblivious to the disturbance in the force and the new alliance that has just formed. And that is the end of season 2, episode 1 of Dance Moms. And holy crap, you guys. Again, I am sure they managed some like space-time continuum rip to fit all that into one 42-minute episode. Because my God. Ray, what's your takeaway from the episode?
Secure attachment is vital to the confidence of your children.
And then my takeaway is going to be I need a nap. That's my takeaway. This episode made me need a nap. All right. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Happy spooky season. And thanks for hanging out with us. And we will see y'all next time. As always, I have been Kacie, not Rachel.
And I have been Rachel, not Kacie.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
CBT in the TV is hosted by Rachel Sprague and Kacie Campbell. Our show is produced by Rachel Sprague, Kacie Campbell, and Yakov Paley. Editing by Yakov Paley. Our theme song was written, composed, and performed by Emily McNally. Please join us on Instagram and TikTok at CBT in the TV for even more fun and access to the resources mentioned in today's episode. Thanks for joining us.